Before we get started here on the list, I do want to make a little announcement for the channel, and it's something I've done a bad job of informing you about, and that's that I actually created a Patreon. Yay! For those of you who enjoy what we do on the channel and have the financial means and calling or desire to support the channel in that way, that is up. So I am going to link that in the description below. If even 10% of my subscribers were able to give $1, something like that does make a huge difference in helping creators. So I never want to point it out and seem like a beggar, but I do think it's worth throwing out there. And there are some fun, exclusive little support tiers in that thing. So without further ado, let's jump right into the list of 5 Batmobiles that I would want to see in a future Batman Arkham game. Now, look, I understand that there's some trepidation in the waters about Batman Arkham Legacy or a possible future Batman Arkham game, so this list could definitely apply to any Batman game. But let's just assume for the sake of the list, hey, maybe in the future we will get another one. These are the 5 Batmobiles I'd want to see. The first one is one that should be no surprise to anybody since I constantly go on about this show. It was a gateway to me for getting into Batman and really enjoying the cartoon adaptations of him, and that is the Batmobile from The Batman, which, thanks to the Matt Reeves movie that's coming up, has become more confusing. Again, this is not the Matt Reeves one. This is the old, I believe 2004-ish is when it started, cartoon of Batman in his earlier days, sort of getting out into the world and networking and finding his Bat family. This is that Batmobile. I always thought this was very unique. It's very mechanical looking, like it combines mechanical looks with technology. It's very much a sports car. It's very much actually like a convertible, I think. And it's very obvious looking at this, at least I think it is, that there was some inspirations with the Telltale Batmobile. So they obviously, in the Telltale games, must have modeled it somewhat off of this type of look, because it is very similar. But I also love the coloring in this thing. The fact that it doesn't just go with the black, but it has the classic shades of light blue in it. It has fins on the back, like bat fins that are blue. The whole thing is just beautiful to me, and I absolutely love it, and it's an underrated car from an underrated show. The second Batmobile I'd love to see is one that's just a natural progression of what we've already seen in Arkham Knight. We already saw the Batman the Animated Series Batmobile, but one part of the animated series that is often forgotten or loved, depending on where you sit in terms of character design, is the new Batman and Robin Adventures, or the new Adventures of Batman and Robin, or Batman the New Animated Series. It's called different things by different people, but this 4th season / extension of Batman the Animated Series has its own unique design for everything from the updated Bat suits and Bat family members to the Rogues Gallery to the car itself. It is much more simplified than the original. It looks much less like the Burton Batmobile would go on to look like, and it sort of went its own way. It's sleek, it's stylish, it would show up in multiple versions. Like, obviously there were versions of the later car in the comics that were inspired just by this one. Where it does lose some people is its simplicity. It definitely toned back a lot of the Art Deco design of the original Batmobile from Batman the Animated Series, which obviously then went on to inspire a lot of Batmobiles on its own. So because of that, this is definitely a Batmobile that people either love or hate. It's not as good as the original, but hey, we got the original animated series. Why not get to see this one? The third Batmobile that I would love to see in a future Batman game is a really tacky car, but it's also super fun, and that is the Batman Forever Batmobile. This is a weird one. I mean, it's very colorful, lots of lights. It sort of goes for that more neon and obnoxious 90s, like late 90s style. This was obviously the era of comics where there were people with pouches on their uniform just for the hell of it. So it stands to reason that we would get an obnoxious looking Batmobile for the Kilmer update of the original Batman timeline. And wow, it's a weird one. It seems to be partially inspired by that Batman, like the original Batman Tim Burton movie car, but in a weird way. I mean, it ditches all of those mechanical elements of that original and the Art Deco, and sort of like goes all in on like the no, this is gonna be an artistic concept car. It's really odd, but I love it. And it has these obnoxious looking fins on the back of it. It doesn't just have them on the back two wheels, but also on the cockpit or the cabin. There's like a line running down the middle of the car from the nose all the way back to the top of the cabin that then extends out into a bat fin or wing. It's really odd. And even the tires are weird and lit up. I mean, the thing is, it's fundamentally kind of dumb. Like, I don't know how much I like this thing. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, this is super tacky and dumb. And then other times I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I'd drive that. That's pretty sick. It really fit the era. And I don't think every Batmobile in the game would have to be practical looking. I mean, we already got purple gloved Golden Age Batman as a skin. I think we could definitely bite the bullet and get this thing down. The fourth Batmobile that would be just fantastic for me to see is one that I'm not sure how it would be incorporated. I would hope that we're past the idea of the Bat tank, because I really just don't love that idea. But at the same time, this has some fundamental weird things about it, and that is the Batman Beyond Batmobile. The reason this is weird is because it's much more like the Batwing than a car, but I definitely could see it working if the developers were willing to put a little bit of extra work into it. So if we're assuming that the Batmobile just drives on land, which again, a car generally does, the Batman Beyond Batmobile doesn't do that. It's able to fly. It's not just a land vehicle. It hovers above the ground. So how would they do this? Well, there is one way that you could do it essentially, and that's just to not have wheels connected to the ground. So just essentially cut that element, have the car hovering slightly off the ground. It's almost like a no-clip thing, but you know, you're not going through the ground. It's just like you're hovering above it. I'm not sure if there's a word for that. So if there is, in the comments below, let me know. But just cut those wheels out, and I think we can make it work. Just might be a little weird. This one has a unique design in the sense that the cabin doesn't really look like a cabin. Like, there's not a discernible window to this thing. It's just a covered cabin. The same exact technology style as the rest of the car. The weird bat fins still extend sort of back, but they remain like part of the body of the car without actually going off as a spoiler on its own. And the actual beginning of the car, like the nose of it, has sort of its own bat shape. This thing is weird. It doesn't really look like a car, and especially when you combine that with the red and silver mechanical features and technology on the sides, it's an odd car. But it's one that I grew up with that I would love to see in a future Batman game of some kind. And hey, it has, like, objectively, this ain't even my opinion, guys. I'm telling you the objective truth. One of the coolest cabins in any Batmobile. I mean, every time they pan to Terry and he's in that thing, and it's just all red and black technology everywhere, sort of a neon red. Oh, it's just like you get the chills. It's amazing. The final Batmobile is a car that I think is actually really stupid, but in a good, obnoxious, fun way. And that is the original red Batmobile. This thing is pretty dumb. Like, it went through some odd changes too. I was gonna say character design, but some odd vehicle design changes where it's like sometimes it's more of a convertible, sometimes it's more of a closed top. Sort of depended on who was drawing this thing and what year it was in. But for the first few years of Batman's life in comics, he didn't really drive that like dedicated black car. The Batmobile was like this red convertible. I believe it was originally modeled off of a 1936 Cord, and it's weird. It's just a classic car. There's not much about this that's bat-like. And it would go on to have this like hood ornament that was bat-shaped. It's just a car. I think it would be fun to see because it's dumb, because it's obnoxious. And like I've said in some other lists, I feel like I always include something that I think doesn't fully fit, but would be fun just to allow player choice, agency, and a different type of cosmetic This car is that for me on the car list. You want to be different and weird? Okay, well, Batman's driving around the city taking out, all the goons in a convertible. Just a normal convertible. It's also not even that out of place because we already saw this with the Adam West Batmobile in Arkham Knight. This is just going a step further and going all the way on the classic elements of the classic car. It would be great to see, and I would be super pumped to drive this thing around Gotham City. So hey, that's my list of 5 Batmobiles that I would love to see in an upcoming or new release of a Batman game. Whether that turns out to be this Arkham Court of Owls project or something else, I'd love to see these show up. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are there any Batmobiles that I did not include in this list that you would love to see that we have not already seen? That's something that'll be interesting for me to read. Consider checking out my Patreon and pledging over there. It helps me out immensely. And hey, love you guys all. Join the Reddit, check it out, and I'll see you in the next one.